Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, the creator and host of our show. Today we welcome Marty Strong. Now let me tell you, Marty was an amazing guest. First, he was a former Navy SEAL. He's an entrepreneur, CEO, and author of the book Be Nimble, How the Creative Navy SEAL Mindset Wins on the Battlefield and in Business. He shared the concept of a practicing CEO. I really enjoyed that. It gives you different perspective on what it means to be a CEO. He says there's too much time spent on poor leaders. He talks about in the military, everyone is in charge at some point of something. And he also talked about the importance of building benches. I know you're going to enjoy the episode today, so on to the ascent. Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, the creator and host of our show. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat. I want to welcome Marty Strong. Now, first, let me tell you this. Marty has served our country for over 20 years, and I could not be more grateful for Marty and the individuals who have served our country, because we wouldn't get to do what we're doing today and wouldn't get to have this conversation. So I just want to acknowledge Marty and acknowledge all of our veterans. They're very, very important to us, and we wouldn't have the opportunity today that we do. So let's hear about Marty. Marty is a retired Navy SEAL and combat veteran. He's a novelist and a practicing CEO. I love that, practicing CEO and chief strategy officer. He's also the author of a number of books, including Be Nimble, How the Creative Navy SEAL Mindset Wins on the Battlefield and in Business, and additionally, Be Visionary, Strategic Leadership in the Age of Optimization. Marty's traveled over 40 countries, been shot at in a few. I love that. Survived cancer twice and experienced loss of his oldest son. He has spent a lifetime of hitting challenges head on and succeeding in 3 professions, anticipating crisis and leading through crisis and chaos. So Marty, welcome to the show.
And thanks for having me, Pat.
So, I think we're going to have an amazing conversation today. And before we get started, though, I always like to have some fun with my guests and say, so that was Marty on paper. Tell us something about Marty that either, somebody might not know, or something fun about Marty.
Probably my friends from my youth and the guys in the SEAL teams that I worked with, they would know that I liked to dance, and I was a big disco guy at one point. And I liked to sing, and I did a lot of karaoke stuff overseas where nobody knew who I was, so it was a little bit of anonymous karaoke. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty funny from time to time. But nobody that works for me knows any of that or would perceive that, probably.
Well, now they do, and now they're going to ask you for that, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So, I always like to start off the show. Obviously, our listeners, our audience, first and foremost, are entrepreneurs, business owners. And I like to go into, explore as a CEO of an organization, and you have 3 organizations, as I understand it, that you lead. What have you learned, in this journey of being a CEO? What have you learned?
Well, you chuckled at the practicing CEO part, but, I thought that was appropriate. Anybody that's in charge of a company, large, medium, small, doesn't really matter. If they're humble enough, they realize they're practicing all the time. They're trying to get better every day. There's no school for it. You don't go out and get a certification. Now you are a CEO, go for it. And
yeah,
you tend to, rise like cream to the top eventually in an organization. Sometimes you didn't in an organization, but another organization is looking for somebody just like you, and they pop you in like a cherry on the top, and they say, go for it. And, the first thing is, okay, I'm a CEO. This is great. I've always wanted to be in charge. The second thing is, oh crap, I'm in charge. And there's nobody above me to blame. There's nobody above me to point fingers at. There's nobody above me to, to do anything. So you have to create you have to kind of understand that you are it. You're kind of where the buck stops. The second thing is you have to be humble enough to realize you're not going to have it all right and perfect. And you have to use all the talent that you have in your organization and outside the organization if you really want to first survive and then thrive as a CEO. And you need to have a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And you need to be patient and have a good perspective about the world around you, because you usually don't fail as a CEO because of something that happens in the walls of your company. It's when you get attacked like a pandemic, something hits you from the outside.
Yep.
You overreact, underreact, don't react at all.
Yeah.
And if you do make a decision and it's the wrong one, you tend to double down on it. You don't step back and rethink it. So these are all things that are usually challenges thrown at you rather than something that bubbles up underneath you.
And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one thing that's hard to learn. Like you actually have to experience it, right? I mean, it's not like you go to a textbook and here's the wrong decisions and don't double down on them, right?
It's the same as combat leadership. They don't, I guess they did in the old days. World War II, they used to shoot bullets at the guys trying to get them used to being shot at, believe it or not.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they had guys running in trenches and they would shoot machine guns over the top of them so they could hear the snap and the pop of the bullets. But the real thing in combat leadership is you learn all the football plays, you learn your men, you learn all the tactics and techniques, you learn everything you need to learn
Right.
about everything you can learn up until the moment somebody's shooting at you. And what you find out at that point is not so much about your own fear and mortality or philosophy about mortality. You realize I'm in charge and responsible for all these other guys getting back alive.
Yeah.
And that's an OJT thing. Just like being a CEO, it's an OJT thing. You can't, that's life and death. But if you're the CEO, it's the bottom line, it's the quality of the product or service that's being delivered, it's the health and welfare and sanity and happiness of all the employees that are, waiting for you to make good decisions and may be harmed if you make bad ones. So
Right.
unfortunately, usually when you get into CEO, you've made a lot of the basic calls, but there might be some big ones you've never done before, and you're gonna have to learn by doing.
So we're going to talk a little bit later about your experience in the as a Navy SEAL and what you learned and how you're applying that today as a CEO. I want to dig a little bit further into your entrepreneurial journey. So you're in the military for 20 years, you come out, and then is that when you became like a CEO of an organization?
No, I got out after 20 and went into money managing. I worked for
Okay.
2 different financial firms. First as a financial advisor, and then I worked as a portfolio manager for UBS. So all in about 7.5 years.
Okay. And
Yeah, and then I
sorry.
did a little bit of consulting, and then I went into leadership positions inside large
Okay.
corporations, and that's where I kind of started moving up in responsibility and scope of work.
So, as a CEO, as you go through this process, what do you think is the biggest ceiling that you hit that you had to learn?
The biggest challenge is knowing yourself in the moment.
Yeah.
It's the same again. I'll throw it back to the combat leadership, but if you're never in that situation, even let's say you've been in the Navy for 15, 16 years, and then you
Right.
see combat for the first time, that's the day you find out. If you've been in business and you've moved up in different, you've been a director and a vice president, executive vice president, and then you get to that CEO position, that's the
Right.
day you find out. It's
Yeah.
about yourself. It's an introspective moment, and it can be lonely for some people because they've always had groups and teams and a lot of support, at least an insurance policy of support
Right.
of everybody else around you that are sharing all this accountability, et cetera. But you get to the top, it's you. You
Right.
drive you drive the bus off the cliff. It's your fingerprints on the wheel. So yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest thing you learn, and you learn it really fast.
Yeah, because you can't learn it beforehand, right? I mean, that's really what you're saying. It's as a consultant, we do work with companies, and it's one of the first things where, if you think about it, and I would love your opinion on this because you consult as well. Most organizational issues start with the leader, but if the leader doesn't know themselves, doesn't know their strengths, doesn't know them, that's where you have to start fixing first. Would you agree or have other thoughts
Oh,
around that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been in situations over the years that's one. If you're going to have like a secret formula for success, it's been look at the leaders. If the leaders just aren't cutting it, get a good quality leader in there, and they'll shake that whole pyramid
Yeah.
of performance and execution. They'll work it out.
Yeah.
Good leaders have a huge positive effect, and bad leaders have the exact opposite effect. And I think we spend too long trying to reform bad leaders. And I mean,
Yeah.
when I say bad, I don't mean bad like evil. I mean bad like they're not ready. It
Yeah.
wasn't their time,
Right.
And it could be their style, it could be their communications approach, it could be their risk tolerance, it could be no risk tolerance. I mean, there's all kinds of different angles and dangles there that would define what would be bad.
Do you think this is just a question, and again, I don't want to jump too far into what you're doing now, but I've had the opportunity to talk and interview a few leaders on our podcast, and come in contact with folks that were in the military, leaders specifically. The training that you all go through. I mean, you mentioned earlier that a leader has got the lives of their followers, if you may, the people that they're leading in their hands. Do you think that gives a different perspective? Although it's not life and death in a business, there really are some, significant implications.
Well, if there's anything that the military teaches you, and that doesn't matter, you don't have to be an officer, but everybody that stays in the military for even 4 years ends up being in charge of something and somebody.
Okay.
So you learn a lesson, even if it's a short period of time or whether you stay in 20 years, and regardless of your rank. And basically, you learn to take care of the people around you. You learn to be prepared yourself so that you're not letting the people around you down.
Yep.
You are a contributor as a part of a team. The team can't function well without you contributing to the standard that the team's expecting.
Right.
So there's kind of a cross commitment in, as a leader, making sure people are ready, and as an individual, making sure you're ready. And that's just instilled in you. That's the military experience. So when you come out, it's a part of your DNA. You can't decide when you get a job in the commercial sector, I'm just not going to care about all those things. You want to be squared away. You want to have your act together. You want to be informed. You want to be on top of the game before a meeting, before an event. You want to look out for the people under you. You want to make sure that they're all being trained, being stimulated, being mentored, being coached, because you see it as a team. You see it as a group effort to rise to a standard and hold that standard and perform.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this question. If you could go back to your 20-year-old version of you, if that 20-year-old version of you was sitting in front of you and said, hey, Marty, I'd like some advice, like as a leader, like what advice would you give that 20-year-old?
I would say go to every leader you can find. And in those days, of course, I was a SEAL. Every leader you can find in your chosen profession and ask questions until they either kick you out of their office or you run out of questions, and keep doing it over and over and over again, because there's an incredible wealth of knowledge and depth of understanding with existing leaders that have walked the walk. And all the things we're talking about here in a very short period of time, if you walk up there and you're humble and you say, look, I just want to learn, tell me what you know, tell me what you can tell me. I did that later more, especially when I became a young officer, because there weren't any books about some of the things I was running into. Even in the military, there was a lot of, how complicated do you plan a mission? Is there a scale of 1 to 10 on complicated? Do you make it super, super simple like Fred Flintstone, or do you go all the way to Jetsons level and make it super cool and complicated? Well, there's pros and cons to all of that. And nobody was really explaining that. Nobody was saying you should have a philosophy that's here, a level 7. And, so I went around, started talking to people.
Yeah.
And these people were from lots of different periods of time in the SEAL teams and had a lot of different kinds of experience in Vietnam and other places. And there's some common truths that you pick up after you've asked the same questions over and over again. And then you pick up the kind of nuance and the difference in their particular experience and the journey they took. Yeah, I would have started much earlier. 20 years old would have been good, instead of maybe 27, 28. Yeah, and I would have been ahead of the game if I did that.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. I apologize, but I love to do this. And I know you'll be able to handle it, because if you're a SEAL, you can handle anything, right? If there were 1 or 2 questions that you would coach somebody to ask a leader, if they had that opportunity to interview the leader and gain knowledge, any questions kind of rise to the top?
First question would be, why do you want to lead?
It's a great question.
It's a telling question. I mean, if it's all about the bucks, if it's about, wow, I always want to see my name at the top of the org chart, that's very superficial, and that's not going to really sustain you through all the hard times that you're going to have, because all leaders have difficult times.
Right.
The second one would be, if you could change anything about your leadership style, if you could pick the one thing,
Yep.
and you could focus on, and you could change it, what would that one attribute, character trait, what would that be?
Okay.
Usually between those two, I would know whether they have a shallow commitment or a deeper commitment,
Okay.
and whether or not they are humble enough to recognize they have something that they should improve in.
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is, I'm good to go. I'm pretty squared away
Yeah.
right now.
I know everything.
And then of course the other part of that answer is, if they are humble and hand you that answer, you say, okay, well now I know where to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for that. I knew you'd deliver at a high level. So let's shift gears, because this is really, I really am excited about this. So you've led organizations and you led people in the military, and for many years, and as a business executive, what would you say is the single biggest difference in the two different paradigms?
Well, the first one would be what I mentioned earlier, that leaders and all military people eventually have to be leaders. Leaders in the military are focused on the well-being of the team, accomplishing a mission together, and everybody is committed to each other, and the leader should be committed to the team, and vice versa. That's the first thing. That's not normally seen in the commercial world. It's hard to hammer that out of a
Right.
group of disparate people that have just kind of jumbled together over time, that have different reasons for being at a particular job.
Okay.
The second thing is, in the military, they hand you your people, fully qualified, ready to go, motivated, right? I mean, in the SEAL teams, they'll still argue with you because they're real smart guys, and they have
Right.
great ideas. But and I've discussed this a lot recently, if I lost a guy, let's say a guy broke his leg,
Right.
and he was a communications guy and my secondary sniper, and he spoke French, I could go down the hallway, 4 minutes later, they've got a name for a guy who's got all those things, and he'll be there tomorrow morning, and he'll be fully trained, fully qualified, same
Yeah.
experience level, and it's like a Pez dispenser, and you just stick them into your team and you keep going. So when you get out and you get into the commercial world, oh my God, it's like some kind of a video game, searching for talent. You're,
Right.
oh,
Right.
that's not going to work, or that's not going to work, or that source didn't pan out, or wow, he was really good at interviewing, but man, what happened afterwards? You learn all this stuff that the regular, non-military world has lived with
Yeah.
forever, that it's hard to find good people that have all those attributes you're looking for.
So then that goes to something, again, I would love your perspective on this, that our view of this is that's why organizations always have to be building benches, and they always have to be looking at that talent in the organization, and where is that next sniper? Where is, would you agree with that? And that's what organizations struggle with?
I absolutely agree. In my first book, Be Nimble, I allude to it all through the book, one way or the other, because it's kind of a core philosophy of mine. But cross training, after the core training is accomplished to whatever standard you need, then you cross train, small steps first, and then eventually get everybody multi-trained in at least 2 or 3 capabilities. And sometimes it's knowledge based, sometimes it's a skill, because that builds the resiliency of the organization. That also means you can start cross-pollinating project teams.
Right.
Otherwise, you have the same people in the same project team all the time, because you need a chief, a cook, and a bottle washer. You need these 3 separate people all the time, instead of having one person walk in. And the individuals I've found most individuals respond very favorably to it. They're not used to it.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little suspicious that you're going to load them up with things they weren't qualified for, that didn't line up on their resume.
Yep.
Once they realize you're not going to, do a gotcha on them, they start saying, well, this is pretty cool. I got my day job. I'm here in cubicle 72 doing my day job. And then I got a meeting on a project. And then this afternoon, I got a meeting on another project, and
Yep.
it mixes it up, and I'm contributing, and I'm a part of a bigger picture, a bigger collaboration in the performance of the company.
So let's compare the two again a little bit. In the military, if you've got somebody who's leading, who's not leading, let's say at the highest level, maybe doesn't have the skill level, like, what do they do in the military with that individual?
Yeah, it's called a firing squad.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
No, yeah, well, maybe. I mean, hey.
No, not even metaphorically. Back to what I said about making sure everybody keeps up and catches up and maintains a standard. You always train your replacement in the military. You're always training your replacement. And so I don't care if you're a four-star admiral, four-star general, you're training the three-star. Three-star's training the two-star to be the next three-star. You have an obligation at leadership all the way down to the corporals training the privates so that someday they can step up and be corporals. So you maybe a little bit too much enabling, I would say,
Okay.
especially from the commercial standpoint.
Yeah.
But you have time, and it's also the culture and the tradition of the military to take that time and to try to figure out a way to make that leader work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we applied that in the commercial side, the business side, how much stronger would our organizations be?
Well, they'd be a lot stronger. There'd still be some more enabling. Enabling is expensive on the commercial side.
So what do you mean by enabling?
Enabling would be, okay, you have a bad leader and it's clear that they're not doing very well. So you could get a good leader in there tomorrow.
Right.
But you don't. You keep them.
Yes.
You work with them. You try to smooth off the rough edges. You try to get other people to mentor them. You try to coach them. You try to give them new opportunities. All those things. And meanwhile, if they still haven't changed that much, all the people working for them are suffering.
Right.
Right. And that's the enabling part. They see you as not taking care of them and not making the decision that should have been made a month ago, 2 months ago, because they're not appreciating this whole thing about training and replacement. They're only seeing their own misery. So, but it takes time to do that. And it's expensive in the commercial arena,
right,
to spend all that time. It could be expensive as a cascading effect on other operations and things, not just the time that you're spending as a leader with another leader sitting in a room and not managing the business you're in there. Yeah.
It's probably more expensive with the cascading effect on an organization.
Depends on how long it goes.
Yeah.
I have been accused and I've been guilty of enabling on the commercial side more in the first 10 years, but because I couldn't stop being who I was coming out of the military. You leave no one, you leave no one behind, right?
Yes.
So you don't just say, wow, Phil's a little slower than the rest of us. Sorry, Phil. And you just keep running. And then Phil gets captured or killed. You figure out a way to carry Phil to the end of the mission. So that's the way you think about all of your people. And that's the way you think about, including leaders. It doesn't change. So,
sure.
So I probably hang on too long. I know I've hung on too long in my professional past outside of the military. But, that's just the way I was.
Well, no, that was the way you were programmed for 20 years, right? And I mean, and that programming, I mean, that was the life and death, right? And so I get that. So then let me ask you this around that. So what caused you then to have that like aha moment or flip that switch and go, yeah, that's what we did in the military, but we can't do that here the same way?
I had a Master Chief SEAL who was my COO, and this is a guy who's got an MBA from a major university. I think he did 22 or 23 years. Sat me down and said, I'm going to give you a talk like I'm the Master Chief. And he said, boss, you gotta get out of our way. Let us do what we got to do, because some of these people that you're trying to protect and telling us to give them more time, it's messing the whole place up. And I realized, he was right. And then, like you said before, if the leaders' attitudes, philosophies, what they think is important, what they think is not important, that trickles down. Everybody gets it, right?
Sure.
So if I'm the chief enabler and I run that way, pretty soon everybody's enabling. It's not just me; it's all the way down. There's nobody makes a hard call. So because Marty's not going to make a hard call, he's going to try to repurpose this person 6 different ways before it's too late. So there's a balance. I think I don't think you have to go to you jettison everybody with with some kind of a diabolical device. You just push a button and they're gone. You replace them.
The floor trap, right? Boom, they're gone.
But I also realized that the best place to avoid that whole dynamic is the job design, right? And where you put that job in the organization, and the early vetting and recruiting process. Measure 15 times before you hire. Because if you bring somebody in that's a cultural fit, energy fit, technical fit, all those kinds of things, the likelihood they're going to be they're going to need to be, the beneficiary of enabling is
Sure.
really, really low.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all the work up front. So, you're doing a lot of great work today, obviously writing books. Now, like, tell me what the biggest things you're teaching organizations and leaders right now about dealing with chaos, because clearly we have a little bit of chaos, right? I mean, we won't even get into the last couple of years and just all the social things. And so what are the big things you're teaching leaders right now?
My primary, I guess, method is to explain to people that they need to take time to think of the big picture every day, which most don't. Most businesses don't have strategies, and if they have strategies, they're written and put on a shelf and they're never looked at. And they're not usually true strategies. They're usually just a list of
Tactics.
metrics and financial numbers, and that's it.
Sure.
A strategy, we're going to become the number one, whatever we're going to be within 36 months in, quality and culture and this and that. Okay. That's a bunch of noble aims.
Right.
But usually organizations are so busy, especially nowadays, they're so busy. There's so much competition. Things are moving so fast. They feel it's a luxury to take a couple of minutes at any time, and think of the big picture. Look at the horizon, do a 360-degree kind of turn. Who am I up against? Who are my allies? Who are the competitors that are eating my lunch? Who's on the horizon that could eat my lunch? What are the opportunities laying out there?
Yep.
And then pull yourself back in to the day. And if you start doing that as a habit, as a leader, you'll find that within about a month, you'll start recognizing everybody around you and everybody below you, and maybe some of the people above you, have no horizontal perspective. They're all focused on what we'd call in the teams the short target, the 3 foot target. So, if your to-do list only goes to Friday, you're definitely one of those people. And you don't have to be a CEO to think strategically and think, I guess, aspirationally.
Right.
So, my second book, Be Visionary, is a big focus on that, because optimization, which is measuring and metrics and KPIs and all these things, has actually kind of distorted management to where it's all about, counting how many chickens are in the coop,
right,
how many feathers there are in the chicken. So I basically make a case that optimization is actually kind of the enemy of strategic thinking and visionary thinking. Take the time. I suggest 20 minutes a day. Doesn't matter when you do it, just do 20 minutes a day. It actually changes the way your brain perceives. It's kind of like if somebody says, let's see how many Volkswagen Beetles we can find. Suddenly you start seeing them everywhere, right?
Oh, sure. That's how the brain works. Yeah.
Right. Because your mind will focus on it. And that's the same thing in this case. It's not a huge investment in time, 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Well, 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, 12 months a year adds up, right? And most people don't do 20 minutes a day in a year, right? So, I mean, it seems like a small number, and yet it's a big number. Oh my gosh, we could probably talk to you for hours. I know I could. So let me shift gears. What's the best advice that you've ever been given?
The best advice I've ever been given is, when you don't know something, ask. And the best way to do that is to seek somebody that is considered knowledgeable, and go to them on bended knee and beg for information and training, or whatever they'll give you. That's it. And again, that's back to that humility thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. It ties into that. So let's flip it upside down. This one's always interesting. I say, what's the worst advice that you've ever been given that hopefully you didn't follow? And if you did follow it, what did you learn?
Let's see. The worst advice is to trust to the technical professionals in HR. Let them do their job. They will make sure we get the right people in the building.
That's absolutely the worst advice.
Nothing against HR people, but
yeah,
they're not big on cultural fit and dynamic organizations. Being able to deal with chaos and crisis, you need to have a dynamic group of people around you that are willing to, kind of run to the sound of the alarm and say, what do you need us to do? Well, how can we help? And that's a mindset. And that collective mindset in one room is a culture.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree. Well, Marty, you know what? I'm going to ask you for a final thought here in just a second. So I want you to collect that amazing stuff that you've experienced. Listeners, you know, we so appreciate you and appreciate you listening, whether it's live or, you know, following us on all the major channels. We're every place. I always share with people, you know, go leave us a rating, follow us, and you'll get all of our updates. We have some amazing, amazing guests in the past and moving forward. So we just so appreciate your support, and that's why we do this. We just absolutely love giving back and helping people. And you know, just like Marty today, our guests are amazing and they provide so much content. So Marty, take us away. I'd love to have your final thought. I know you're going to share some information where people can go to find more about you. And so what would be your final thought?
So if you go to martystrong.benimble.com, I've got a lot of articles, access to my business books there, a little bit about me, and I keep that updated on a pretty regular basis. But at the very bottom of the homepage, you're going to see that there are two covers. One's for a science fiction series of novels that I've written. The other one's for a series of SEAL novels that I've written. I'm 60% through the 5th SEAL novel right now. All the proceeds from those novels, and I write under ML Strong when I write the novels, all the proceeds of those novels goes to the SEAL Veterans Foundation, and specifically the programs that address TBI, traumatic brain injury, and PTSD. So when you're buying a book or you're listening to the book on audio, your money's going to those programs.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing. And what a great, you know, a great way to contribute and give back. So give us your final thought.
Well, if everybody out there just takes my advice and thinks about life, the big picture of life for about 20 minutes a day, and then thinks about that advice I got that was the best advice I ever had. If you don't know something, go find somebody who does. Humble yourself, practice intellectual humility and listen.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the world will open up for you.
Well, I think we've got such opportunity right now, and I think a lot of people need to take that advice. So I think it's just great advice. Well, Marty, again, thank you so much for today. Thank you for your service and all the folks that have served our country. We so appreciate that. We appreciate you. We appreciate you contributing today. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pat. It's been fun.
Listen, my pleasure. As I end every show, be happy, be healthy, be safe until the next time we talk. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us on The Ascent today. You can find us at any of your favorite podcast sources. You can also subscribe to get updates and additional pieces of value that we send out at www.thesuccessascent.com. Thanks so much for your support. Please leave us a review. Have an amazing day. Take care.